Hello and welcome to Planet NOLA. I'm your host, Mary Jacobs. This is the podcast where I talk to people in New Orleans that I think are cool or just doing cool things around the city. Today I have my good buddy Tara Tolford with me. Urban planner, urban planner.
Correct.
Does some really cool work. I can't wait for you guys to learn more about what she does. I can't wait to learn more about what she does. It's the whole reason I have her here. I appreciate you being here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hell yeah. Okay, what's your official title?
So I am a research associate and pedestrian and bicycle outreach coordinator at University of New Orleans Transportation Institute.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what I think you do, and I want you to tell me if I got it right.
Great.
Okay, because following you for years, I think I understand it, but I don't know. Just seeing sort of what you post on the internet. Mm-hmm. Are you keeping kind of numbers on pedestrian and public transit usage?
Yes, in part.
Mm-hmm.
So my work over the last 10, 12, 14 years, it's been a while now, has focused on understanding walking, bicycling, and transit in New Orleans as well as statewide to understand the trends, how things are changing, work on policy and design so that it can suck less for everybody who's getting around. In addition to a number of other urban planning initiatives that aren't so specific to the biking and walking, but that's definitely been a big part of it. And so, how I used to describe what I did to people is, I sit on the side of the road and count bikes,
right.
Which is a little simplistic, but has historically been a pretty big part of it, is just getting some numbers because we don't have a lot of data about this.
I didn't realize it was all Louisiana.
So in the last few years, we've taken the work that we did in New Orleans, and the state, DOTD, to their credit, their research arm, the Transportation Research Center, recognized we're doing good work in New Orleans. How can we scale that up to the rest of the state that is, just as terrible in terms of safety outcomes and this kind of stuff? How can we do better? So they hired us to help work on some of those pieces. So we've been getting there.
Hell yeah. So I feel like the stuff you're doing is to make roads safer for pedestrian, basically people, non-driving people.
Anybody who's not in their own personal steel cage. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And it just feels like this is a thing that should have a lot of funding. And it seems like it's a thing we don't really even talk about or consider it. It's like so many people don't have access to their own car.
I think it's 18% of households in New Orleans right now.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's 1 out of every 5 people pretty much doesn't have a car.
Yeah.
So it's a disproportionate amount of money in terms of the need that there is, although that's starting to change. Yay, new infrastructure bill. We're looking at potentially more money being available to start to do something about it.
What are some projects you've worked on specifically that you've got to see in the city, kind of the work you're doing? Do you see do you get to see stuff change because of the work you're doing?
I mean, I like to think we're at least a little tiny part of it. There's lots of people who are responsible for actually getting stuff done, but absolutely. So back in the day, you remember Esplanade used to be 4 motor vehicle lanes and they were really skinny. I got hit there on my bike by somebody who just couldn't be bothered to shift lanes. I'm in the right lane and they're just I'm just gonna plow through you. And then they fixed it. A couple years later, they added the bike lanes. You start to see these changes in the network, and there have been lots of cases where it has made a tangible impact on my life personally, which is great because I have this career that has allowed me to personally improve my own risk of dying has gone down significantly since I have been doing this work, which is very rewarding.
So you can feel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's up. I feel sometimes in these kinds, especially research, it's you're getting numbers, and then maybe you don't get the tangible thing for a
it's
long
slow.
time.
It's really slow. And it only works because I've been doing it for so long that you're able to see, maybe you're counting bikes at the same location year after year after year, and nothing's really changing. But then finally it connects to something else. So Gentilly Boulevard is one of those where the numbers weren't going up until finally some stuff connected to it, and now you could actually get somewhere if you were riding your bike on Gentilly. Right. And then suddenly it shoots up.
I see so many bikes on Gentilly Boulevard now.
Absolutely.
That is a scary place to ride still, just because of the people driving jerks. Yeah. It's really because people treat it like a highway.
Yeah, and we're in this place now where it's okay, we built some bike lanes, cool. What's the next step? Because we're not. It's an improvement, but we're not there yet. There's still a lot of work to do. People still drive like maniacs.
I know. It's a lot of it is the work you have to do with the drivers, but drivers aren't listening.
But you can't. One of my favorite sort of philosophical things from this work is with the Dutch idea of sustainable safety, which is generally the idea that you can't fix people. Like they're going to be dumb, they're going to be assholes.
Right.
So you need to build infrastructure that reduces their ability to kill you when they screw up or are, intentionally trying to run you over.
Yeah,
so like you can mitigate that harm by building it right.
That makes sense. And I'm glad that there's at least some people in the world that are doing the work you're doing. I feel like especially in this city where it's such a driving city, people, especially if you have a car, you just quite literally forget about the 17% of households that don't have that.
It's true.
And so I'm not regularly thinking about infrastructure for pedestrians. Do you know what I mean? And I should be, as a community member here, thinking about it more aware of it, like more aware of initiatives that are happening. I mean, when the bike lanes went up, I was like, oh, wow, finally. Like, it just because I'm not a biker here. But I was in Philly when I lived in Philly. But here it's like it scares me when Kristen even just goes on a casual bike ride. Because I'm like, people don't know how to act around bicyclists. And now we have more bike lanes than ever, and I feel great about that. But there needs to be people giving a shit like you guys give a shit. And
For sure. And like you say, this is a driving city. And that's true. Like almost every city in the South is a driving city fundamentally. But it didn't start that way. New Orleans was something else before that. A lot of our roads were built for bikes, actually.
Really?
And yeah, like St. Charles Avenue was in part paved because of the bike enthusiasts of the early 20th century.
No way.
Yeah, they were gung-ho about it. But
could you imagine if St. Charles right now was just for bikes?
There's a street in Amsterdam where it used to be just like a regular 4-lane road, and then they like narrowed the space for cars over time, and now it's just transit. There's a streetcar that runs down the middle, like a nice grassy streetcar area, and then it's just like cycle tracks and wide sidewalks. There's no space for cars at all. Like they eventually were just like, we don't need you on this road. So it's possible.
That's epic. It's not possible because Uptown is such a shit show. They don't have any streets.
There's no streets left. So
yeah, I was about to say, not there, but maybe in other spots. They've been always talking about making the Quarter a pedestrian mall, which is its own thing. Have you? Is this like a real initiative, or is this just like a whisper thing around the world? Do you know about this?
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's just sort of an idea. Like there have been parts of the Quarter that are pedestrianized for a very long time now.
Like Royal Street,
Bourbon and Royal, and Jackson Square. Once upon a time had cars on it too.
Oh, really? Yeah, that makes sense.
There are significant economic benefits to not giving up all of your public space to people parking their cars and slowly driving them, especially now when it's all Ubers and Lyfts everywhere. Studies have shown that like you actually make a lot more money if you have foot traffic. Like that's what drives business is people around on the street.
Surprise. Also, I bet it would be nice if there were like people actually living in all the homes down there, making it a real neighborhood.
Yeah, that would be great.
It would feel a significant amount safer because there'd be people on their porch, And of course, there are the odd people who bought at a smart time, but for the most part, you go past blocks of houses that are closed because they're not in town.
And you increasingly see that not just in the French Quarter too. Like that's one of my like bike stories that I'm sort of working on and want to do a deeper dive into is the Marigny. I used to live in the Marigny back when I started this gig with the bike counting. That was one of our initial
little house,
spots.
Right?
I had a few spots in the Marigny. Okay. We moved around.
I've been to one spot you guys had a couple times for parties. It was like right by the tracks. Kind of, right?
Yeah, that's the Montague Street
house.
Montague house, I was on Music, I was on Burgundy, I was in the area for a while. So I was watching it change as it was happening. And the Marigny used to be like the hot spot for biking and walking.
Yeah.
Like that was, known, that was a thing. But we've been counting bikes there almost every year since 2010, and every single year the number of bikes we count has gone down. That's the only location where that's true. And it's not because, people stopped biking in New Orleans. It's because nobody lives there anymore. Yeah. And all the artists and creatives and grad students don't live there anymore because they can't afford it. It all got Airbnb'd.
They can't afford it. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast is because people love New Orleans because it's full of artists and they love the culture. But, when you price out the people that make it cool, what you get is like a capitalist watered down version of the French Quarter and the Marigny, where there are no artists living, no people that are making the cool things. And you just put us in these tiny little pockets at this one market or that one market. Right. And it's like we don't get to live and create and make it special. Like we're a lot more restricted when our rent goes up or we get pushed out of the neighborhood where we've been living. It's like, oh God, it's so depressing. And that just makes me think about the whole greater picture, which is like the culture bearers, the people that make this place so interesting are the ones that are constantly being sacrificed to the development of the city and to the tourism of the city.
Yeah, and I think we're at a really important moment right now where we can just let that keep happening and accelerating, because COVID just like ramped it up times 10 with the number of people who are leaving town, or we can make a really concerted effort to do something about it.
Yeah.
And so far I'm not seeing the like political enthusiasm for the doing something about it, but I really hope that changes, because if not, we're headed for kind of a dark period in this city that we love so much.
I think it's affecting so many people, and it's like, it's such a subversive thing. It's like one person loses their housing, and then maybe a couple months later another person does, because it's happening in so many small bubbles. It's like affecting people in such a personal way that it's like lacing people together to be like, hey, this is a greater trend. Like, what can we all do? And I don't have the answers, you know? Like, I love talking to people like you. I really want somebody to come on from, like, Jane Place and the Renters' Rights Assembly, places like that, because I think they are trying to start the conversation and and have initiatives to get people in homes. It really is just comes down to housing, right? Like, yeah, no one's living in the neighborhood, so no one's biking in their neighborhood because they're probably having to drive from Gentilly or wherever they're living now.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that as like lower income folks are having to live further and further out where there's crappy transit and there's no bike lanes. And so now they have to have a car note, and that on average costs people like $9,000 a year to own a car.
Keeps you poor.
Keeps you poor.
Yeah. It's built with intention. And I think people don't want to put it in those words, and they don't realize that like this, people are getting gentrified out of their neighborhoods, but the ramifications of gentrification aren't just, they have to move farther away. It's like, everything goes up the moment they move further away. Even if their rent goes down or stays the same, you've now put even more barriers in place for this person to be able to be secure.
Exactly.
Or move around the world. It sucks.
It does.
Well, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Do you work with the public transit system at all?
I do. Not, directly, but I am on the board of Ride New Orleans, and I like chair up their policy committee where we just like talk about these issues all the time. And I really think, even though a lot of my work has focused on bikes, and that's sort of the most public facing side, like I think transit is 10 times more important. I think that that's the backbone of having a good city, is you need to have effective transit. And we have made huge strides in New Orleans, and we're in a really promising, optimistic moment where in theory we're about to implement a whole new network, basically. The New Links plan is supposed to come into effect fully later on this year that will ideally make it faster and easier for people to get places, and it specifically is like equity focused and saying this is places where people are actually taking transit and where they actually need to go.
Right.
So like maybe we axe the line in Lakeview because nobody's taking it, but we're going to put that money into somewhere where it's going to be needed. Yeah. So I'm feeling very optimistic about that. But again, it's a big question of political will. Are we going to implement it? Is, one well-connected person going to complain and suddenly everything gets undone? We've already started to see that happen in some places. Yeah. So the transit piece, I think, is, if you want to have a great city where people don't have to drive, having a great bike city is amazing, and we should definitely do that. But it doesn't work if you don't have a backup plan for the days when it's raining and somebody can take the bus instead.
Exactly. That makes so much sense. I'm going to be honest. My entire life, RTA, whenever somebody asks me when they come in town, they ask me, should I take the bus? I'll be like, nah, don't take the bus. They'll never show up. You're SOL. You're going to be waiting at that stop for a while. But I haven't taken public transit since I was like 7. So besides the streetcars, obviously, I've popped on those many a time. But the buses have such a bad reputation. Like, I've been spouting this my whole life, and what do I know anymore at this point?
We got to get you on a bus. It's not so bad.
Interesting. Okay, tell me about it.
So I moved here in 2003, and the buses were sort of a mystery to me then. The first bus I ever got on in New Orleans, it happened to be on Mardi Gras Day. We were trying to get downtown. There was zero information about the fact that actually they were just going to stop in the middle of Central City and kick everybody off, and then you're on your own, figure it out. We had actually really robust bus service back then, but it still was pretty tough to use.
This is pre-Katrina.
Pre-Katrina, yeah. After Katrina, it was 50,000 times worse. It was garbage. And I have been in New Orleans now 19 years and never owned a car, don't drive. So I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it has improved dramatically from the actual experience of being on the bus. Like, they're generally pretty clean and nice-ish now and air-conditioned and everything. And yeah, you get, as I very, historically have called it, you get bus fucked from time to time, where you're waiting and your time for the bus has come and gone and you're still there and you had an appointment you were supposed to get to and it's just not happening anymore. It happens, but it happens a lot less now, in part because of technology. Now you can just look at the app on your phone and see where the bus is.
Whoa.
It's not 100%, but
whoa, but still.
It's enough to really improve.
Not New Orleans.
I mean, it's literally every other city. We were kind of last, but we got there.
Okay, that checks out. That checks out. I was like, this sounds really advanced for us. I'm impressed.
Yeah, so that's, technology really helps because just having information makes a huge difference. And reliability is still we got some work to do. COVID didn't help because there have been staffing issues for a year and a half, and it's been a mess. And I think everybody's had a little bit of a sense of grace about that. Of pandemic.
Is being a bus driver in New Orleans a good career?
It's a decent union job.
Got the bennies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always been a good union job, but it's not I'm sure it's not fun. I don't want to drive around 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So they've had issues with getting enough people who have their CDL licenses and can be a bus operator. It takes a while to get there. So they've got.
I feel as it should, right?
Yeah. You want people who know what they're doing.
That's something that needs a little bit of certification. When I was in college, I was allowed to be a dental assistant, out of nowhere.
Wild.
Isn't that wild? No certifications needed whatsoever to be a dental assistant.
I don't think I want a college kid in my teeth.
Thank you. Okay. I kept, when they're like, you got the job, I was like, how? In what world do I get this job? I'm an English major. I
mean, you've been brushing your teeth your whole life, presumably, so close enough.
But that for me was the first time that I was like, there's probably a lot of jobs that have absolutely no training or no education required. Mm-hmm. And there are some that they should. And I was thinking a dental assistant should really have some training and some sort of cert.
I would hope.
At our gym, all of our trainers have to have certifications to train people.
Mm-hmm. In Louisiana, I just read an article about how we license freaking everything. Every profession you could possibly have, there's a license for it.
Well, because it's a way to make money.
Exactly.
Where does that money go? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, a bus driver is definitely one of the ones where I'm like, it's good that they have to go through a little hoops with that because that's a big vehicle to be driving.
Yes, indeed.
I've been on a bus in New York once that sideswiped a car.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this thing is huge and we're in New York. I don't even understand how anyone could drive anything like this in New York.
I see people drive crazy around buses all the time, making a right turn in front of a bus as it's about to go through the intersection constantly.
All the time. People are such jerks. You realize that thing is really big, right? If it hits you, you're the one who's going to be SOL. Mm-hmm. So would you say that the reputation is deserved or...
So I would say that anybody who rides the bus has every right to have some complaints. I frequently am emailing RTA with a whole list and am disappointed when they don't immediately address every one of them. But I would say that most people who don't take the bus probably have an unrealistic idea of how difficult and hard it is. It's really not that bad. You can, unless you're trying to go to Jefferson Parish or anywhere outside of Orleans, then it really is tough.
Interesting, because you've got to switch and
you got to switch systems, and then you got to pay your fare again, and the Jefferson Parish system is really underfunded and doesn't go to a lot of places. So it's really tough if you're trying to commute regionally without a car. But within Orleans Parish itself, it's not bad.
What's the bus fare?
$1.25.
That's what the streetcar is too.
It's the same, and day pass for $3 if you're trying to take the ferry and go to the West Bank or whatever.
Whoa.
Or take 6 buses in one day. So it's cheap.
How'd you get here today?
I actually got a ride today because my partner was like, I need to make my son go outside. It's beautiful.
It's
so
pretty.
I'm they're, I think, over there at Mildyburg right now, throwing a Frisbee and stuff. And also I was like, it's Sunday. If I try to take the bus, it's going to take a while. So
that's so real. Well, I thought maybe you biked. I was like, it's a pretty day for a bike ride.
It would be a beautiful day for a bike ride. I live in sort of deep Bywater now, Poland to St. Claude area, and
go over
the connections over the railroad are not good. So it could have been a beautiful day for a bike ride, up along City Park and then loop back over here.
That's long, and then you gotta sit down and do an interview. It's a lot. And also, I live across the street from a giant open field, so it's pretty nice to run a kid around and tire them out. Mm-hmm. That's what's up. So you don't have a car and you haven't had a car ever here. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend that to people?
If you are in the privileged position of having the kind of job where it is okay if sometimes you're late, and maybe, you know, since COVID, I've been able to work from home, still half time. And so I don't have really intense demands of a lot of places that I have to be at specific times. A lot of people don't have that luxury, and they still don't have cars, and they still have to get to places. But for, you know, folks of a sort of type of professional class where there's some flexibility, it's really not hard.
Yeah.
As long as you've got somebody whose car you can borrow when you want to go camping or something like that. You got to be able to get out of town.
You have to make friends.
You got to have friends. Yeah. At one point, like, most of my friends didn't own a car. So then we'd be like, well, how do we go to the beach? Like, we got to figure this out.
Like rent a car for
like, if somebody could please finish that dang train so we could all go to the beach without a car.
Dude, is that train really happening?
I think it might.
Explain the train. What's the line?
So the Gulf Coast Rail would be the one that goes from here to Mobile. That's like in process. There's like almost nothing stopping it except maybe some politicians in Mobile. Everyone from here to there is like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know, the new administration is very pro Amtrak, so there's money available. There's, you know, things are in the works. So that one is like pretty far along and supposedly is going to happen this year. I think that's not likely, but I would say maybe it'll happen next year. Like, nothing is currently stopping it.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. More train lines, like,
and hopefully to follow the one from here to Baton Rouge, go in the other direction. We've been talking about that forever.
Wait, the city of New Orleans doesn't go to Baton Rouge?
It sure does not.
Whoa.
Yeah, if you want to go to Baton Rouge, you have to take the Greyhound, the Flixbus, or the Megabus, none of which are great options, because you're still stuck in traffic once you get to Baton Rouge.
It's so heartbreaking that our nation ripped up all the rail lines in order to sell more cars, because it is so obvious that train transit is the way of the future. It's the way of a giant metropolitan. And like, this is gonna sound so cheesy, but I love Walt Disney. I mean, I don't love everything about Walt Disney.
There used to be a train to Orlando.
Don't get me wrong. Yes. What I loved about Walt Disney, not his like anti-Semitism or anything, but what I love about him is that he was really innovative and he thought about the future of transit. And this really, I don't know if you know about him and his love of trains. No. So Walt Disney loves trains, and the monorail at Disney World, he had proposed to big cities. I can't remember which cities now, but it was like multiple cities building monorails in their city, the same exact pattern of the one at Walt Disney, and think about it, it's a raised train on one track, and it's huge. It moves tons of people at once. He was like in the process of urban planning in these cities, and of course people didn't want to fund it because they knew they would be losing money for the private industry. And he was trying to propose this piece of public transit that could move people in a way that's efficient, fast, has a small footprint, you know? Like, if you've ever been in Disney, the monorail has a really small footprint, and it moves people fast, and a lot of them. And it's like, I've seen the infographics of like, how many people can fit in this many cars, how many people can fit on one bus, how many people can fit on a train in an hour.
All the people.
It's wild. Like, it is wild to me that it's not more of a thing.
Absolutely. That's kind of like my passion in terms of urban planning is public space and how we use it and how we waste most of it. And transportation can be such a big part of that. Like, you can have really efficient ways to get people from point A to point B that don't take up acres and acres and acres and acres of pavement that makes our flooding problems worse and makes our environmental problems
especially
worse.
Here, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have to build green spaces here to catch water. It's like, come on, guys. Like, don't we not want this place to flood? Like,
exactly. Like, I think that the statistic is like 1/3 to 1/2 of publicly owned land in any city is the streets. Like, that's what we've got to work with. So if you're not like thinking about your streets as a place where you can address all of your sort of civic issues, you're missing the mark. Yeah.
You're messing up. Tara, we have to take a break.
All right.
Be right back. This week's episode of Planet NOLA is brought to you by Vitality Community Fitness, a group training facility located in Metairie, Louisiana. Vitality prioritizes their members with accessible workouts for anybody. Any gender, any size, any ability. I'm a little biased because I do co-own this business, and I gotta say we've got one of the best communities around, really great coaches, really good vibes. So if you're interested in trying out our gym, go to our website, vitalitycommunityfitness.com, click the contact form, and you get 3 free classes in a week. So come check us out. Hello, we are back to Planet NOLA. I'm your host, Mary Jacobs. I'm here with my friend Tara. We've been talking about infrastructure in New Orleans, which when you said it like that, it's like boring. But if you've been listening, this has been like the most interesting conversation about infrastructure I've ever had in my entire life.
Excellent.
I feel like I've learned so much in such a short amount of time. We had been talking about earlier about how you're now doing this world where you're working with, you know, urban planning and like environmental
water.
How'd you explain it?
So, you know, I've been working in transportation from that side of things for a very long time. But over the last few years, I've also been working on the climate adaptation and water management side, you know, got a certification in green infrastructure and some things like that. And my goal is to merge those two. Like, why are we not doing both at once? Why can we not kill two birds with every, you know, dollar stone that we're throwing at them to manage our existential crisis as a city, which is the, you know, the water and the flooding and the fact that 30 years from now, when my mortgage is finally paid off,
is my house going
to be here?
Yeah.
So that's, once again, I have very self-interested career focuses here of like, I would like to preserve this city. And water is a big part of that. So managing that side of the infrastructure is critical.
Yeah. I mean, self-interest that just means you found your passion. Like what you're describing is what you're passionate about. And thank God what you're passionate about is going to like help a lot of us.
I hope so.
You know, like what a nice thing to be able to like, yeah, it's self-interested. I want my house to be here in 30 years. But it's also like, I want your house to be here in 30 years. And
I want the city to be here in 30 years.
I feel the same exact way, dude. I struggle so much with what you were just saying. Like we want to own a home, right? And it's obviously a dream to own a home in the city I'm from. But number one, I can't afford it because of the way it's trending. And number two, I'm like, even if I could afford the amount that people want for houses in my neighborhood, I remember Katrina. And I'm like, guys, you all guys remember these houses all had 10, 15 feet of water, right? Like, and you remember you're paying $500,000 for this. You know that like 15 years ago, like, y'all know this, right? And it's like, it's sad to think of it that way. It's sad to be like, it seems like a bad investment when it's like, I don't want to think that about my city, you know?
At some point, it's just it's a leap of faith and you just do it because you believe in it. And then you got to commit to doing the work.
It's so real. It's so real. It's like, that's what I mean. Eventually, I'm sure we will do it and we'll bite the bullet, but I'm going to be terrified. I'm going to be so scared. I'm like, oh, is it going to happen again? But we were talking a little bit about the infrastructure thing. It was the resilience district. That was a thing in Gentilly for a while. And if you're listening, resilience district people, what the heck? Where you been? Like,
pick up the pace a little here.
Yeah, so this was this thing that was proposed, like, it feels like a decade ago at this point, where they were taking they're specifically starting it in my neighborhood, and they were making these, like, tiny kind of rain garden situations almost, where they're planting really water-absorbent plants in places where there's concrete or in places like abandoned lots, and I think they took the old convent too, maybe.
The Mirabu Water Gardens.
Right. Yeah. And it's supposed to be all these different caps of curbs. They're supposed to be fixing those up. And it just feels like I love the idea of that. It's like, let's have more green space to absorb more water. Like what you were saying earlier. It's like, we've got all this cement and this is our problem. So like, how can we fix this, you know? And there are cities that have done it. Like, doesn't Amsterdam have like a really good?
The Netherlands have been on this game for a while in terms of, you know, we're not going to just keep paving over everything. Denmark, Copenhagen has done a lot. They have these crazy cloudburst storms that just dump like 10 inches of water on them and they flood. So they're like, hey, we got to work on this. And so they've been doing a lot of that work by creating all this underground storage space that there's infiltration through green infrastructure and it looks beautiful. It also makes the streets like wonderful places to be.
Denmark is so cool.
It's nice.
I talked about it on Charlie's episode. I don't know if you listened to his episode.
Oh, I haven't yet.
But we talked about bike stuff a lot. And when I went to Denmark, I rode bikes there, and
it's so great. And you don't wear a helmet, and you feel so free.
The most incredible experience. Like, you're so safe. And you have your own light and everything. And the fact that they have this, like, epic water system doesn't surprise me. I've often said if I could have just been born somewhere else, it would be anywhere in Denmark.
I will say that, you know, New Orleans has a plan. We have the urban water plan that is very much modeled after the Netherlands or, you know, Copenhagen. Cool. And it's full of projects and ideas and, like, principles about just completely reframing our relationship relationship to water, to be a more, resilient's kind of a dirty word, but like to be a city that can survive.
But the definition applies, like we know what the word resilient means and where it applies, but we're just sick of people overusing it for us.
But we could get there. And, the Gentilly Resilience District is sort of drawn from that plan with the idea of like, we don't have enough money to implement this whole plan. You never have enough money to implement a whole plan, but we're going to start here. And this will be the pilot that is the model for everything here on out. So there's, I'm very excited to see the results. And there have been some results, like the community adaptation program has been individual homeowners doing individual interventions on their property. Yeah. And that's amazing. It is fantastic. And it's, all those little individual interventions add up, but the big projects are like still stuck in the 80% design for what feels like years now. So I'm really hoping that we'll start to see those actually get built. And once they are, then we can say, hey, like we can evaluate, does this work the way we intended it to? Like, is it really having an impact? How can we make it better? How can we do it everywhere and not make it this special project that we only do in one place?
Right.
So that's what we would like to see, is that this needs to be institutionalized. Like, make it part of city code, make it part of, all development henceforth must abide by these rules.
You know what I love about you, Tara?
What's that?
I love that you are doing this work in the city and you're doing it from a place of just, you love it here. Mm-hmm. Like, you're a little Mardi Gras monster. Yes. I see you every year. You go ham on your costume. Like, you're one of the people that came here for college and was like, well, I live here now.
Yes.
You never left. You're genuinely somebody who did the thing. Like, you fell in love with the place and you're like, this is my community. But you've since day one been like, okay, this is my community. I'm part of a community. And the work you're doing is like so community centered.
Really, it's been since like, I don't know, day 800 or whenever it is that Katrina happened. That was really the moment when it turned from like, oh, I'm a student pursuing art history at Tulane and I'm going to move back to Portland when I'm done, to be like, no, this is my place and I must defend it.
You got trauma bonded.
A little bit, yeah.
But it means a lot to me, and like I think I'm so happy that you're here talking, because I think people should know you. They should know the work you're doing first and foremost, like, and that it is work that's happening here.
It is.
And we should care about it. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, I kept being like, I need to have Tara on because I need to understand what Tara is doing. And like, I'm so glad that I have a better understanding of it, because we all need to have a better understanding of this, because it is literally the future of our city, the future of people. Also, it's incredibly anti-capitalist, which I love. It's really getting me going. I talk about it all the time on this podcast. It's like the most anti-capitalist New Orleans podcast there is.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's such beautiful work, and it's like, so much of us absorb all the beauty and great stuff of New Orleans, which I know you do, but we don't remember that there is an actual community we have to protect and serve.
For sure.
Sounds very cop-like, but you know what I mean. And you're really doing that in your work and what you give a shit about, just generally.
Well, I hope that it eventually, it pays off and we can see.
I think it already is. Yeah. I think it already is. That's why I was asking you, like, have you been able to see?
It's gotten better.
Yeah.
Things are getting better.
I think that it's also just going to be an ebb and flow. Like, maybe there'll be less bicyclists in the Marigny, but maybe we can build out the Ninth Ward infrastructure and like.
Yeah, we need to invest in our people and invest in the people who need it the most where they are,
and the people that are living here full time, not the people that are visiting or the fair weather tourists who own houses. This is where I've been like just burned up, especially since I started this podcast. It's really just, I've learned so much about how our city has been prioritizing the visitor in a way that has left so many of us in the dust. And obviously I love the tourism industry. I worked in it. I sold art. I've benefited from the tourism industry of our city, but we really have to pressure our city to prioritize us sometimes because of that industry just being the bread and butter of everything in town.
Absolutely.
And this is that work, because this is about the people that are living here and like working here and going to school and hospitals and need access to the city in a real way. Not just tourists that want to take a streetcar down Rampart.
Exactly.
Does that streetcar line...
They never reopened it from the Hard Rock collapse.
It's still closed.
It's still closed. I think they said early next year. So apparently when, remember when the crane went upside down and went into Rampart Street, it messed up a bunch of stuff. So they had some like they basically had to rebuild the whole like infrastructure for the streetcar line to bring it back on. And I don't think it was really super prioritized, which to RTA's credit, because they're like, we got other stuff to worry about right now. Right. We'll get to that streetcar when we get to it.
Yeah, that streetcar already didn't make any friggin' sense to me.
Yeah. Streetcars are lovely. They're very pleasant, but like that's not how people who are trying to get to work are getting around for the most part, with the exception of Canal, which people think all the streetcars are just tourists, but Canal Street is just like a lifeline of the city, and people are commuting on that.
Yeah, a lot of people commute on that. I feel like that's so real. I think I see people commuting on the St. Charles one too. You always see waiters in their little things going down. I used to do it. Yeah.
When I was waiting tables, I was taking that thing every day. It's so
slow.
Sometimes you would walk 3 miles home, like thinking like, I'll just get on the streetcar when it gets to me, but it never gets to you.
It never gets there. You just walk all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so real. The streetcar is gorgeous, but whenever they add a new streetcar line, I'm like, it's just so slow. And it's mostly for the tourists when they add a streetcar line because it's so freaking cute.
It doesn't do a lot for people who are disabled, have mobility issues.
Right. They're like so hard to access, right? They have to have something, right?
So a couple of years ago, they finally, as a result of lawsuits, as a result of the advocacy work of, I think you knew Jonah Baskin.
Jonah.
Finally, they said, okay, we are going to make some streetcars and some stops wheelchair accessible. And they finally did that, which, woo, but like
some streetcars and some stops. Wow.
So like you might have to wait an hour or two for your accessible streetcar, but it's progress. And my understanding is they do plan to keep building on that. It's just
as they should.
Slow process.
They're just going to keep getting sued if they don't.
Right.
It shouldn't be that friggin' hard. Man, Jonah was such an interesting person. What a beautiful fucking soul.
Absolutely. Comedian, advocate, like he was a good dude.
Did it all. And was like such an advocate for the disabled community in New Orleans. And like, man.
He went hard at Mardi Gras too. I'd always see him out there.
Yeah, that's so funny. He was a little before my time. That was like when I was away and coming back, but I obviously knew who he was and what he was doing. There are so many people like that in this city that I've just like, even when I wasn't here, I was just like seeing them do stuff. And now I'm asking them all to be on my podcast.
Indeed.
It's nice to like be in a community and caring about it and finding other people that do. It feels so much better than the alternate. Like people that come here and don't really participate in like a deeper, meaningful way. I'm like, you could be anywhere. There are fun things to do in other places. Like I know New Orleans is really fun, but like deeply,
it's more than that.
It is. And I watch people move here for, and I know within a year if they're going to be here for the long term. I don't know if that happens with you.
I'd say so. In recent years, I feel like I've seen a lot more people leaving than I have, been meeting new people coming in. And some of that's just where I am in life and things.
I've been meeting a lot of people coming in, and the thing is they skew really young.
Okay. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. I've been meeting a lot of people coming in lately. But yeah, I just feel like there's two ways to live in a city, and in New Orleans, the strife of our crappy everything, like our city.
It's a steep price to pay.
Yeah, it is. It's like, oh, it's fun, but it's also like super corrupt, and it's going to make you mad, and your shit's going to get stolen, and you're going to run into some stuff that has to make it worth it. And then those are the people that turn around and they say, oh, I can't live there. It's too hard. And it's like, it's worth it if you're invested in your community and you find yourself like, you really do the work to put yourself here,
And some of us just don't belong anywhere else and just can't even consider the possibility. And so if you're stuck here, you got to make it work.
You make it work. You care about it. That's so real. I really appreciate everything you're doing. How was your Mardi Gras this year?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was so great to get back out there, and I wore a comfortable costume for once, so that was fun.
I did too.
And like to see people who I hadn't seen since literally Mardi Gras Day 2 years ago, and it was a beautiful moment. That's like, oh, I think we all really needed this to like feel like this is our city that has been a little weird for 2 years now. So
it's so real. I had such a good Mardi Gras. I also wore a comfortable costume this year. It's so funny. I feel like you might be able to relate to this. You make every year I feel like your Mardi Gras Day costume is really cool.
It's something ridiculous.
You invest your time. you do the thing. And I feel like I used to do that too, especially when I first came back after college. I would be like, all right, all my energy into my costume, and I was always really proud. And this year I've just been like, and probably the year before we closed too, I had just like really exceptionally busy beginning of the year, and this year I had a breakdown. I was like costuming something for Kristen and I before a ball. And I went to this thing where I was like you just assume that I'm going to make your costume too. And she was like, you don't have to. And I was like, no, I have to. I have to make yours and mine, but you just assume I'm going to make yours. And she's like, but you just said you want to. And I was like, yeah, I know I want to. And so that was part of it. And then like, I'm like hot gluing like moss to like this piece of felt. And I did something wrong. And like, I was getting down to the wire and I just like, there was a moment where I'm like in my underwear holding like a hot glue gun and like half of a leotard in my hand. Mm-hmm. And I'm hysterically crying. I was so overwhelmed costuming because this part of me that wants to have the best costume ever has never gone away. Mm-hmm. But the part of me that's like, I'm old and busy and tired and have to make some compromise. I had like an identity crisis while costuming. Truly. I don't know how else to explain it. I was like, why am I so upset right now? Because I couldn't do it.
Sometimes it's you know, Mardi Gras catharsis, and there's some like rough spots on the way to that. So.
How do you not have a panic attack while you're making your costume?
You know, it's my like primary creative outlet. I don't do anything else.
How long do you take to make it?
I usually come up with the idea like around like Christmas break or
You're
something,
smart. Okay,
and I'm like, plan. Okay, so like I need to get some supplies.
Surprise! The urban
like,
planner
work on
plans.
some, yeah, for real, and like work on some pieces and parts here and there. You know, we had a sort of costume making party with my partner Ian and Ariadne way early in the season. Like, let's get some progress on this. And then at the end, it's always just sort of a crazy shuffle. And my partner is like, he waits until the very last minute and then has the most elaborate idea ever. And it takes him like nonstop 24 hours a day. He's like up late every night trying to get there. He gets there, but his version is way more stressful. So I like we're going to ease into it approach.
Yeah. That's smart. I think I need to just like do a better job next year if I want to actually have a costume. But literally this year I said to so many people, I was like, I get why people pay to have their costumes made now. Mm-hmm. Like, I get it now. I never got it before. I was such a purist. Mm-hmm. I was like, it's DIY or die, you know? And now I'm like, but maybe there's somebody.
As long as it's somebody else's DIY.
Yeah.
Like, they did it.
I want it to be one of a kind.
Amazon.
Yeah, I want it to be one of a kind. Exactly. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to be like this, like, buy and flip, whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this year I was like, man, I'm tired. It came out fine. I just wound up wearing doing my jacket on Mardi Gras Day. But another cool thing we did this Mardi Gras is we decided every Sunday before Mardi Gras we're going to wear the same costume every year because we're going to do the grandma crew. We have our friends all dressed as grandmas. So now we'll do the same thing. And I'm like, that's so easy because that's just one costume.
Planned, yeah.
I don't have to think of. All it is a muumuu. It's so comfortable. Okay, so you just bought a house. Wait, you bought a house in 2020, so pandemic.
I bought a house in November 2020. Yes.
Dang,
so pandemic, but like before the market went nuts. So like, whew, thank goodness, because it wouldn't have happened this last year.
For you, yeah.
And you know, I bought it, and it's a double. So I did the classic approach of like, I qualify for this mortgage by buying it and renting out the other half. I rent out the other half to my partner, which is perfect. And everybody needs to do this.
It's genius.
The exact right amount of togetherness.
That sounds great.
Somebody's paying, you know, half your mortgage and can do all the repairs and things if they happen to be extremely handy. So this is my like relationship advice to New Orleans is consider the double. It's an option, and it's a good one.
That is so good. How long have y'all been together?
Going on 4 years.
That's awesome. Do you guys ever stay on each other's sides?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He stays on my side more than I stay on his side, but, like, you know, there's a good balance. We've got a mix. We've got options.
Oh, I love that. I would be fine with that, honestly. Kristen's a trainer, so sometimes she trains at 5 a.m., and I joke that, like, she wakes up and she just, like... like just starts slamming things, and I can tell she's trying so hard to be quiet. I can tell she is, but she is the opposite of quiet. And if we had a double, I'd be like, on the nights you have to wake up or in the mornings you wake up at 5 a.m., you sleep on the other side.
Exactly. My partner's a teacher, so he stays up sometimes grading until the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah.
It's a good balance.
So it's shotguns?
Shotgun, yeah.
Hell yeah. And where'd you buy?
So, according to the city, by water, but no, it's on the other side of St. Claude, so nobody would actually think of it as that. So it's St. Claude.
Okay,
Upper Ninth Ward.
Yeah. That's what's up. You like it?
I love it. I realized early on, because I'm a nerd and I was digging through like city code I don't know what I was doing in city code. I discovered that my neighborhood is technically a bird refuge. Like it's legally designated as such.
What?
And so then I got really into birding because it was COVID also, and like why not feed the birds? birds just to keep track of what you got. And it really is a bird refuge. There's like a million different kinds of birds that live around the house.
What's the most surprising bird? Or what's your favorite bird?
I really like the black crown or the yellow crown night herons that live in the oaks on Poland Avenue. We've got these like crazy red house finches all the time now. Hummingbird season has just started again. We saw a woodpecker the other day.
I see woodpeckers around here sometimes.
So we got a good diversity of them.
That's really cute. You'd think that in the middle of a city you wouldn't be able to get that. New Orleans got some nature, man.
It does.
Mostly possums.
It does. Yeah, we've got Ninth Ward chickens running around everywhere.
So many
of course.
chickens.
I've been trying to lure them in because one time one of them laid a whole bunch of eggs in my yard, and I was like, yes, this is amazing. And so I've been trying to get her to do it again. She finally did, and then the next day a rat came and ate them all. So now she's pissed at me. This chicken is like furious because she thinks I did it.
Yeah.
So we got wildlife. It's a good spot.
Man, I love the little random street chickens. They really run the city. They got some confidence too, just like crossing street and don't care.
Oh yeah, my partner's cat got out one time and was like chasing the kittens or the chickens, and the chickens won. The chickens showed him who was boss, and that cat has not tried to mess with him again.
Chickens are mean, man. They're mean. They're terrifying. Okay, Tara, I ask everybody the same last question. I know you've watched some episodes, so you might know that this is coming. I like to see, who do you think should be on the podcast? Maybe somebody that doesn't get the light shined on them that should.
So I got a few ideas. Let's see. So we've been talking about sort of, the culture and New Orleans piece, but I also think you should talk to Andrew Marin.
Okay.
I don't know if you know him.
I don't know him.
Oh, he's my boy. So he's a semi-professional eater and drinker and booster of the New Orleans like hospitality industry. He's former industry, but now he loves it. He's another one of those. He tried to leave New Orleans.
What does he do?
He came back. He used to work in insurance, so he's had sort of a normal straight job for a long time.
He's just like a lover.
He's an enthusiast and
hell yeah,
very talented and knows his stuff. So that's a good one. Talk to Ethan at Macno if you want to talk to talk more about the gentrification scene.
Who's that?
He's the executive director of the Music and Culture Coalition of New Orleans. I actually don't know him personally, but we went to UNO at the same time for our planning degrees, and does a lot to just advocate for the musicians and the folks who work downtown and the people who make the city. So he would know some stuff.
Yeah, these people sound like my kind of people.
Let's see who else we got. My friend Janelle Campion, she's a Jackson Square artist. So if you want to talk to the visual arts side of
what kind of art does she make?
She makes wonderful art. I don't know how you would describe it. It's got sort of a folk art aesthetic. She had just these wonderful series involving skeleton bodies. I have bits of her work in almost every room of my house at this point. And just the world of the Jackson Square. She lives in the quarter. She works at Jackson Square.
Oh, hell yeah. I want that life. That sounds like fun.
I might also hit up Ron Brody of the Ice Cream Speakeasy.
Oh,
I don't know if you know him.
I've heard of the Ice Cream Speakeasy. I don't know this person.
Fascinating dude. We've known each other for years, and he makes the best ice cream in town, and also is an educator and a naturalist and all sorts of stuff like that. I feel like I had a couple more ideas.
I knew you would know cool people, Tara. Look, you're hired. You're gonna be my new booker. Gonna need you next season.
Absolutely.
You're one of my last episodes of this season.
Oh, how exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. 12 episodes we've recorded.
Nice.
I know. I'm very proud of us.
What a robust first season's effort. Yeah.
Truly. I could not do it without Carrie. It's truly, I'm so grateful for you to be here and for everyone that's been here this season. So you the best.
Appreciate you.
I'm so glad that you came. I'm so glad that we learned so much. My brain feels so much bigger. Thank you so much for listening to Planet NOLA. I'm your host, Mary Jacobs. This has been Tara Tolford. We have been talking about everything infrastructure, everything New Orleans. If you care about this city, go do something for it. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to people that are doing work like this. Ask questions, learn, and advocate for your community, because it's what we got. It's what we got. If we want to keep it nice and good, we really have to give a shit, to put it lightly. I appreciate y'all so much for listening. If you have it in your heart, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, share this with a friend. That's how we're going to get more ears on this podcast, and we want as many ears as possible. Thank you again to our guest, Tara, and my producer, Carrie. Y'all be in touch.